Alrighty guys, we are back with some Legacy of Kain lore. This time, what the fuck is Vorador? Now you see, Vorador I find a very interesting monster because he is a moral one. He preaches about basically vampire virtues, what the vampires should be, what they can live up to. But at the same time, he's very disdainful to humanity. So before we really dive into it, let's first ask the question, who is he? Who is this guy? Who is this crazy looking, gnarly looking monster you have displayed right now? Well, Vorador was the first vampire that came from human blood. You see, the vampire race was dying. They were sterile. And their biggest issue was, how can they continue protecting the world, continuing their legacy? How can they continue the 9 pillars of Nosgoth standing if there's no vampires left? This is where Janos Audrin bestowed upon his favored and almost son-like servant, who is a human, Vorador. He blessed him with the blood gift, the blood curse, as some would call it, which was vampirism. And they found that this is how they can pass on their legacy. This is how they can continue their lineage. So Vorador was a step in the right direction. And Vorador pretty much forgot all there was about his humanity as he fully embraced vampirism as his race, as his identity, and more importantly, as his safeguard, his safekeep, what it is that he should be fighting for and protecting at all times. Now, he is very different from Janos in many ways. Janos views humanity with pity and with sadness, but he also looks at them as a potential race that can learn just as much as the vampires can. He just finds it necessary to kill them. Vorador, on the other hand, does not share that sentiment at all. How ironic is it that Janos was never human, yet he sympathizes with them, yet Vorador was human, and he hates them. He despises everything about them. One could probably argue that maybe Vorador hates humanity so much because they represent to him what he used to be. Arrogant, wrathful, highly zealous, ignorant as hell. They just embody everything that maybe he once was. Now, of course, we never see him in his youth. We only see him near his fall, his death. And by that point, he's very wizened. Sure, he's very brash and very, boastful of his exploits, but he's very wise. He's very cautious. And usually someone who's like that usually has had experience with their reckless nature when they were younger. So maybe that would be the deeper reason why Vorador hates humanity so much. But let's get on to the next topic. You see, Vorador's history is a very complicated thing. As timelines shift, not too much has really changed, for him at least. The only thing that would really change would be the first time-altering event. Because you see in Legacy of Kain, they changed time several times. A lot. Almost like 4 times. And with that comes about a bit of consequences. Now you see, Vorador, when we find him in Legacy of Kain, Blood Omen, he is living in Termagant Forest, which is this humongous swamp that Kain himself regards as a very odd location for a vampire to reside in because it's so hostile. It's so full of water. It's so full of danger. There's little to no humans there, as there's many monsters all over the place. It is a hostile environment, even for vampires to live in. So the fact that he lives there is a very odd choice. This choice of seclusion is obviously a deliberate choice, which again is a little weird. As we discussed before, Vorador likes the vampires, so why would he choose to live so secluded in a spot that would actually be dangerous for them? Well, we're going to get into that. You see inside his mansion, I mean literally it's a mansion, this thing is a labyrinth. It is amazing, puzzle, complicated device that is very hard for anyone to actually navigate through. It's almost like Resident Evil. Just, you need a key to open up this door, but that key is locked behind 3 other puzzles that you have to solve. It is obviously meant to deter would-be invaders. Now, you may again ask, why would he want to deter invaders? He's a vampire. What would he have to fear? Well, you see, we find out later in Soul Reaver that the reason why Vorador is so secluded, and we find out a little bit in Blood Omen 1, is that he regards humanity as dangerous, that they are nothing but cattle that should only be used when you need to feed. In other words, if you have ever seen a farm animal like a cow, they are nice animals for food, but they are not nice animals to hang around with. They can be brutal. They can trample your ass into bits and pieces. So, when it comes to such a deadly beast, you usually want to just be out of reach, but close enough to where you can always snack on it whenever you need to. Maybe pull a straggler away from the herd. This is more or less Vorador's ideal of living. In fact, we see it. There are tons of people trapped in his mansion. It's almost like a whole village. Except these people are kept in frozen refrigerators, so that way their bodies are kept fresh. There's also a lot of pipes and channeling through the mansion, so it shows that he has some refinery capabilities of producing this blood. So as far as like staying in his mansion forever, he could absolutely do that. In fact, Kain himself was taken aback as a young vampire. He goes, whoa, so much blood, like whoa, who's the great king who owns this place? This guy's got it made. All this delicious blood just lying around. All these people chained up, just ready to be feasted on. And it's actually interesting is that Vorador's mansion is littered with vampires, but the vampires are thralls. Even Kain notes how they're just nothing more than puppets of their master's will. So it shows another key aspect of Vorador we're going to talk about here soon. But these women and these men are essentially Vorador's companions, but also his concubines. The women he mates with, even though they're sterile, and the guys who keep him company and guard his place. So it shows that Vorador does have his own hierarchy, his own rulership, his own little kingdom. Now, here's where we're going to get into the weirder part, is that he is very hedonistic. He is just littered with gold everywhere, luxurious goblets, a throne. And in Soul Reaver 2, it's actually nice to see it because he is the last standing vampire at one point in the series, where Kain is recovering from his time warp, and he is grasping at the effects of what his time travel has done. His time travel has sparked a new war against vampires. So Vorador is like the last man standing, and you see his mansion is just run down. The throne he used to sit on is just this cracked throne that's just decayed. His mansion has just fallen into ill repair. The only thing that resides there now is just ghosts. Ghosts of vampires, ghosts of the souls that have been tormented there for so many years. It is truly a desolate and dangerous environment, even for the amazing Kain to live in. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit more again about his history. You see, the Sarafan, when they were first founded, they were founded originally to fight vampires. Because again, they were becoming a problem. They were starting to feast on humanity, maybe a little too much. Maybe there was just too many vampires. Or more likely, again, another prospect is just that Mobius and many of the Circle wizards, who are all human and pro-human, they probably just spread lies and spread information about vampires that would rile people up to want to kill them. Like, why would you let this baby murderer live next to you in a cave? Wouldn't you want to kill him and stop him from murdering more babies? That's pretty much what would happen. And this is where we see the difference between Janos Aldrin and Vorador again. You see, when the Sarafan were going about killing whole families of vampires, wiping out entire bloodlines of vampires, Vorador viewed it with anger, with hatred. He knew these vampires. He was there when they were first founded. He remembers this elder vampire lord when he was a young man being welcomed into the flock. And now he hears that they're dead. He is pissed. He's furious. He's like, I knew these people well. They were good vampires. They were good people. They wouldn't kill without the need to feed. But at the same time, Janos Aldrin even viewed it with understanding. He goes, oh, humanity is just scared of what they don't know. It's not their fault. They're children. They're new. They're new to the world stage. They don't understand the effects their actions are taking them. And also, more importantly, the vampires are coming from humans. That means that they share those ambitions. They share that wrath, that hatred, that ignorance. In fact, many vampires don't even realize how important it is that vampires should exist in the Legacy of Kain universe. So it brings up that light that Janos, while he is being persecuted and killed by the Sarafan, he holds no ill will towards them. He holds no anger towards them. Vorador, on the other hand, who was a human, hates them. And I think it's always been that saying that you are your harshest critic is very true when it comes to Vorador, because he views humanity probably much like himself. He views them with hatred. Because, I mean, we all have cringy moments when we think about our childhood. I imagine with Vorador, it's probably 10 times worse every time he sees a human, where he just cringes at the thought of how ignorant he used to be, about how sure he was in the past that he was right, and that his humanity was better than vampirism that he's been bestowed upon. It would share a lot of explanation for why it is he preaches so much about vampirism. In fact, anytime you sit with Vorador, I'm not joking, anytime you talk to him, he literally boasts about vampirism, how great it is. Where Janos doesn't really talk about it. He doesn't even care, because he is a vampire. He was always a vampire his whole life. He doesn't know anything else. To him, it's just whatever. Yeah, it's Tuesday. But to Vorador, anytime you talk to him about vampirism, he goes, oh, it's the greatest gift ever. We are gods amongst humanity. We are amazing. Truly, people pray to us for our power. We're just these amazing figures. Psh, fucking humans, fucking sheep, absolute cockroaches, honestly. It's sad that we have to feed on them because they're so pathetic. It's like, whoa, dude, Vorador, whoa, you're going crazy there, buddy. You're just, whoa, supremacy to the max, man. And that's exactly what's going on with Vorador. Now we're going to talk a bit about some other things with Vorador that I find very interesting. You see, a lot of people don't like Blood Omen 2. I actually like it a lot. It makes a lot of sense to me. I'll probably do a video on why it is I love it so much. But Vorador somehow gets resurrected. Somehow. They don't know. No one says how. They don't explain it. Somehow Vorador is back. Great. It actually gives me another reason why I like Vorador. And it's odd, because a lot of people may say, what? You actually like Blood Omen 2? What? You actually like the Vorador in Blood Omen 2? Yeah. It's interesting. You see the dilemma between him and Kain. And it's very interesting. Oh my god. You could do like a whole scholarly article on it. The disputes and the dialogue between the two is very short, but very meaningful. Like, as I said before, in Vorador's mansions, there's a lot of thrall vampires. No vampire who has his own free will. They're basically under his rule. They're under his grasp. And as I said before, he lives in a very hostile area. So even if those vampires were to break away from him, where would they go? Everything around them would probably kill them. It is a fucking dangerous environment. So this raises the question, why does he hate Kain so much? You see, here's the interesting thing is that when Kain first met Vorador, Vorador loved him. He thought he was entertaining as fuck. He's just this brash noble who thinks he's great. Reminds Vorador a bit about himself, but in a more humorous way. Vorador pledges his alliance to him, willing to help him out. And later, when Vorador gets resurrected, he's willing to create new vampires for Kain, but he hates the way that Kain is ruling. He hates that Kain is still arrogant, still bashful, still this terrible tyrant. But he doesn't deny that humanity needs to be under new leadership, and that's the vampires. And this leads to a very interesting dialogue between the two. Because you see, Vorador, on one hand, he believes in the vampires almost like a family, and he would be the figurehead, the patriarch. He believes in cultivating these vampires, raising them like his own brothers and sisters. Kain, on the other hand, believes that a vampire is a soldier, that each one of them should follow knights' rules, codes of chivalry, codes of intrigue, codes of honor. And this is where it leads to a bit of a dilemma between the two, where Vorador sees the humanity behind each vampire. Kain sees the power behind each vampire. He doesn't really care for them at all. And you see this in many of his battles. He has no care that he just wasted 500 vampire lives to take over a tiny city. He doesn't give a fuck. And it's really interesting because you see this where Vorador even outright calls him just this reckless, noble tyrant. And Kain just goes, really? Do you think you're any different than me? Like, do you want to talk about what you would do to any vampire who disobeyed your orders? And that is so impactful, so meaningful into the mindset of Vorador. Because as I said, I think Vorador hates humanity because it reminds him of himself. I think he hates Kain more than humanity because he is himself. And it would explain it. If a vampire back in Vorador's prime days betrayed him, who knows how violently he would have reacted. He hated humanity, but the fact that he lives in such a dangerous environment and the fact that he makes it where all these vampires are under his direct control and they are not able to break away from him shows that he is probably worse than Kain. Kain has no problem letting his vampires roam free, doing their own thing. He just wants them to be under his rule, under his law, under his courts, and under his authority. But Vorador, on the other hand, does not like that. So it makes this interesting dialogue between the two, where Kain just goes, "Oh yeah, I killed this traitor." "You did what?" "She was like my greatest disciple. She was awesome. How could you do that to her? She was so close to you." "She defied me. What would you have done? You would have done far worse to someone who defied you back in your day." Oh man, I love that so much. It's such an interesting moral dilemma, where Vorador is ultimately just a tragic moral dilemma, moral monster, where he hates people based on principle for their arrogance, for their ignorance. But then when you really look at him, you go, wait a second. Vorador, dude, are you suicidal? Do you hate yourself this much? This is crazy, dude. All these thoughts that you have, I can easily look at you and see the same qualities. And it's very interesting when we see Vorador on his last legs in Legacy of Kain Defiance. Because in Legacy of Kain Defiance, he's truly alone. And he's just sitting there with his own thoughts. And there's not a single hope left in him. He's just pretty much accepted that he's going to die. Which again is very interesting contrast compared to the first human massacre where humans, the Sarafan, were out destroying all the vampires. He was very sadistic, very boastful, very happy about the slaughter of the circle. He killed all those defenseless people laughing as they were pissing themselves in terror as they stood defenseless. He was laughing at their faces. And then when their defender finally came, Malik, the champion of conflict, the circle guardian of conflict, Vorador had no problem personally disabling him and leaving him to live forever, knowing that he failed his duty. So Vorador is this awful, sadistic character towards humans, but towards vampires, he's this compassionate, caring individual. It's an odd dilemma, because you see Janos Audron is pretty much different. He treats humanity and vampires the exact same. He sees no distinction between the two. He sees the new vampire races, and he sees the new humans as pretty much one and the same. Ignorant of the true purpose of the world, they may have their moments of conflict, and it may be tragic to lose much in those conflicts, especially the vampires, because, you've known a vampire a lot longer than you've known a human. So sure, a human's family member may have died, but the most he would have known that family member is maybe 40 years, 60 years. Whereas if you've known a vampire companion and they die, that's 800 years, maybe more. So it may be more tragic for Janos to lose a vampire than a human, but at the same time, he will never stoop to Vorador's level of hatred, of disgust, of self-pity. He never will stoop to that. And it's so interesting to see the difference between a father and son figure. Vorador was literally sired by Janos, yet here he is, the complete different person than Janos. It is a very interesting character indeed. Besides that, this has been For Your 700. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and please comment down below what you guys liked a lot about this video. See you guys next time.